أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم صل على سيدنا ومولانا محمد وبارك وسلم وصلي عليه. In the last session we went through the situations which require expiation, kaffara and make-up qada. So we covered that few different scenarios in which if a person breaks his fast, he nullifies his fast, then he'll have to make up for that fast, do qada, and at the same time give kaffara, atonement as well. Inshallah Aziz, today we'll go through a few different scenarios in which a person, if he breaks a fast, then he won't have to give kaffara, but he will have to do qada. So he will only have to make up for that one day of breaking the fast. So for this, first of all, we need to understand a general rule. And that general rule is that if a person swallows something which is unusual, meaning that something which we do not generally consume, something we do not generally eat and for nourishment, something we do not eat to actually fill ourselves up, something which is not eaten as food. Likewise, if a person, he takes something as food or medicine, for example, because of severe illness or severe pain, meaning that he has a shari'i excuse, then that person, if he breaks the fast in these sort of situations, then he'll have to only do qada. So for example, a person, he eats something unusual, for example, eating raw rice. Yes, so if a person eats raw rice, I mean, that's not something we generally eat. Something, of course, it's not easy to bite. It doesn't taste really, it doesn't taste well. So, raw rice is not something which is eaten generally, and, nobody consumes that. I mean, not even one person will find on the face of earth. Of course, unless this is the last thing they have to eat, otherwise they'll die. Otherwise, generally, you don't find people eating raw rice. So if a person eats raw rice, or if a person eats flour or wheat, or a large amount of salt, so these things are not generally eaten. Yes? So now if a person, for example, eats the seeds of the fruit or cotton, if a person eats paper, so these things are not generally consumed. So now if a person eats them, now that will nullify his fast. Of course, he has committed a crime, he has committed a sin, but now there's only qada for him and there won't be no kaffara. Likewise, if a person he swallows water whilst gargling during wudu. So again, another thing, rule you can remember here is that if a person breaks his fast by mistake, so generally then there won't be no kaffara, no atonement for him. The only thing he'll have to do is make up for that fast. So now if a person, he's gargling, so of course it's a mistake. By mistake, the water has gone into his throat. Yeah. So now what he'll have to do is that he'll have to do qada, meaning that he'll have to make up for that fast. He has nullified his fast, but there won't be no kaffara for it. Likewise, if rainwater or snow, they enter the throat by accident. Yeah, so we mentioned before that if a person, he swallows rainwater by intention, by opening his mouth and with the intention of drinking it, then that would nullify his fast. There will be qada and kaffara. By accident, if he goes in, there'll only be qada. There won't be no kaffara for that. So these are the things we need to bear in mind, because these are common scenarios which are possible. Likewise, if a person, he starts to eat his sihri, and then the time of the fast enters, meaning that the time of Fajr starts. So for example, the end time for suhoor is at 3 o'clock. He starts eating at 2:55 and he carries on till 3:05. So now again, for that he'll have to do qada only, and there won't be no kaffara. Likewise, if a person, he breaks his fast, and the reason why he breaks his fast is because he thinks that the sun has set it. So he thinks that it's a time for Maghrib and let's eat. So now he starts to eat, but then he realizes that no, he started to eat before. So now he has broken, of course he has broken his fast is nullified, but there won't be no kafara for it. Why? Because he didn't do it intentionally. So again, this is something we need to remember, this is by mistake. So the general rule is that by mistake, or if a person breaks his fast, most likely will be only qada for him and no kafara. So of course if the sun hasn't set it yet, but he thinks it is set, then he'll have to only do qada, make up for the fast, and there won't be no kafara for it. Likewise, if a person vomits intentionally and it's mouthful. So we mentioned before that if a person vomits unintentionally, it's mouthful, and even though the vomit goes back to the stomach, if it's unintentional, that won't nullify the fast. That won't nullify the fast. Likewise, we mentioned that if a person intentionally vomits, but it's less than a mouthful, even though it goes back, that won't nullify the fast. But now if a person intentionally vomits, mouthful, that would nullify the fast. So now what he'll have to do is, there won't be no kafara for him. So there won't be no expiation, no atonement for him, but what he'll have to do is, he'll have to make up for that fast. Likewise, if a person eats something from between the teeth, which is the size of a chickpea. So of course, after the time of sihi, often if a person, if you eat meat, you need to be really cautious. You need to make sure that you clean your teeth before the time of true dawn enters, before the time of Fajr enters. Otherwise, you'll have bits and pieces. Yes? So now if a person has bits and pieces in his teeth and he swallows them and they were size of a chickpea, his fast will be nullified. So he has broken his fast, but what will happen is that there won't be no expiation, no kafara, but he'll have to do qada. So these are the few examples which I have given you. So there are many other examples which can be given, but the general rule is that if a person eats something unusual, yes, something which is not eaten as food, yes, so the examples I gave is raw rice, likewise flour, wheat, yes, so of course wheat, when we say flour, meaning that just flour in its original form, not after being cooked. Likewise wheat, of course you do not eat raw wheat, so you go to the farms and you start eating it. That's not something which is generally done. Likewise, the seeds of the fruit, for example, the seed inside the apple now, generally nobody eats that. Of course, for example, the kids eat it, or sometimes people might just go into the mouth, but generally, intentionally, nobody eats those things. They are not consumed. So now the general rule is that if unusual things are eaten, which are not generally eaten, for example, paper, cotton as well, so then that would nullify the fast. Your fast will break, but there won't be no kafara for it. There won't be no atonement, no expiation, but there will be what? Qada for it. You'll have to make up for that later. Likewise, if a person eats something and that is because of severe pain, or he has a Shari'i Islamic excuse, so he eats something or he takes medicine, now he has broken that fast, there won't be no kafara, but he'll have to do qada. Likewise, if a person generally eats by mistake, so there won't be no kafara, but there will be qada for him. So these were common scenarios. I pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the ability to understand and follow the way of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Ameen. Bijah al-Nabi al-Amin sallallahu alaihi wasallam.